welcome into the quest for the perfect bracket. We are joined by Autumn Johnson, the March Madness women's basketball host and reporter. Autumn, we're going to go through your bracket because we're so excited to see your picks for the women's tournament. Can you kind of take us through some of the early rounds, some matches, games that you were looking out for, and upsets maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a fun bracket that we have in 2025. And of course, you have to have fun with it. Like, you don't want to go chalk. You want to make sure that you mix things up a little bit because anything happens in March. So, if we look at the first possible upset, I'm really high on South Dakota right now, possibly taking down Oklahoma State. With a 10 seed, taking down a 7 seed, I love that they are prime for this moment. They have the 13th toughest non-con schedule. 2 years ago, we saw them reach the Sweet 16 as a number 6 seed. So we'll see how they fare against them. Also, Norfolk State as well, a 13 seed versus Maryland. I know Brenda Freeze will have this team prepped and ready to go for March, but I love the tenacity that Norfolk State plays with. They've already defeated 2 SEC schools. They have Diamond Johnson, who came to this program to put Norfolk State on the map, and I think she's doing just that. I think she makes an iconic duo with Kiara Willard down low. So that 1-2 punch is going to be lethal, and they have a really good defense that's ranked in the top 10 in the nation. So that combination alone is going to be very exciting to see. And I know we define upsets as 5 seeds, of course, like 5 or lower, and they have to be 5 seeds in between. But I really like Harvard versus Michigan State. People are going to learn about Harmony Turner, as they should. She's averaging 31 points per game, and she just had a 44-point performance not too long ago, and we saw another 40-point game come earlier this season. She is made for March. Also ranked 4th in the nation in defense for Harvard. So those are the upsets that are on my bracket. I only have 3. But you should also look out for Murray State, who is taking on Iowa. In Murray State, they play really fast. Caitlin Young is a dynamic scorer, and they have the number 1 offense in the nation, scoring about 88 points per game. Richmond's another one that you should look out for. I love Richmond as a 3-point lethal shooting team. They're going to possibly go up against UCLA if they knock off Georgia Tech. Michigan can be scary as well. They're young, but they're hungry. There's a lot of shakeup you could see in the first round.
How does that compare to how the nation's picking stats? Because you got some early data with how just bracket pickers in general are looking at the first couple of rounds.
Yeah, so Norfolk State, I was kind of surprised about this. They're the lowest pick 13 seed of the 4 13s this year in the first round, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I kind of wonder if it's because they're playing Maryland. But like I said, that their firepower they do have, the Norfolk State side. Like, now there's been only 7 13 seeds to win. And I don't think it'd be too surprising if it's Norfolk State, Grand Canyon, Montana State, or Liberty that add to that list this year. But I said they're only about 11% from Norfolk State, but that's still up from yesterday since Monday. So I'm curious if that rises up a little more as it closer to brackets lock on Friday. And then you mentioned Murray State. That's coming in about 16.5% in the first round. They're the second highest 11 behind only George Mason, but not very far behind. So they're very popular too on the 11 seed line. And that's, last year, you mentioned how like it's hard. It can be hard to find these upsets. They are there. Last year, there was only one upset in the first round. That was 11 Middle Tennessee. So 11s are the great way to find these kind of diamonds in the rough. And I think Murray State is clearly one that people are kind of latching onto. They're up almost 2 percentage points since Monday. So they're starting to catch on a little fire. We'll see if that continues.
Well, Autumn, let's keep going. Who do you have kind of making a run late into the tournament and then eventually making it to the Final Four?
I really like overall UCLA, South Carolina, Notre Dame, and UConn in my Final Four. And it's interesting to have Notre Dame as a 3 seed in there because they're struggling as of late. But I think this time off is crucial for them. I think, they can shake off the chemistry woes and the offensive woes that they're having and really lean onto their identity of being that staunch defensive team, paced by Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles as just this incredible floor general, and all the pieces that they have around them with Sonia Citron and the depth that they have in the front court. I think their run is going to be crucial, especially in Birmingham 3, because they're in a gauntlet over there, in my opinion. I mean, you have teams like Tennessee, Texas, Michigan, as I mentioned, as a sleeper. Ohio State, Louisville, TCU could be sneaky. So I'm interested to see their run if they can make it all the way to the Final Four. A lot of people have them winning the entire thing. I have them stop against South Carolina because anyone going up against South Carolina, that's a scary nightmare. So we'll see how that goes. As far as another deep run, I'm really excited to see possibly what Kentucky does in their region. I think what Kenny Brooks is doing over there with Georgia Amore coming over, that's a really exciting story to see. TCU also with Haley Van Lith and just rewriting a new story for her with TCU possibly facing her former team in the second round. Watch out for that.
Right, which we love storylines.
We love storylines. We live for it. That could be really fun. As far as who else? Maybe Duke also. They weren't expected to win the ACC championship. They did, knocking off Notre Dame in their path. That could be really fun to see, them go up against North Carolina, which is another ACC rematch we possibly might get in the Sweet 16. Going up against even Vanderbilt in the second round, I think won't be an easy one to get by because of Michaela Blakes and also Camille Pierre. And then they'll have to face South Carolina, which they've already seen this season. So maybe they make adjustments. They've been able to do that in the ACC, facing teams for a third time or a second time. They've been able to figure it out. So those are a few teams. LSU, NC State, it's an interesting matchup. I didn't even know who to select for that one, honestly. Like, I went with LSU, but it depends on their health. Like, we don't know if Anissa Morrow is going to be 100%. She went down in the SEC tournament. Blajay Johnson sat out the entire SEC tournament due to shin inflammation. So that won't be interesting, but if they're all both healthy, even Isaiah James, she went down in the ACC tournament, got back up, but still didn't feel the same. They're going to have to go up against LSU, whoever comes out of that one. So a lot of good runs that we could possibly see.
Yeah. Who do you have in your Final Four? I know that's so hard to pick. So many good teams.
So I have UCLA. I have UCLA taking on UConn. And I know that one might get a little dicey because Southern California is also there. That one was hard to pick too. But the only reason I think UConn will get the best of this one is because you have Paige Beckers, and I love history. Paige Beckers has gotten her team every single year she's been healthy and played. She has gotten her team to the Final Four, or either a championship stage. I think the X factor in this matchup, you can talk about Sarah Strong, you can talk about Paige Beckers, but people are forgetting AZ Fudd is back in the mix, and this team has chemistry. They are flowing on all cylinders right now. And when we saw this matchup back in December, AZ Fudd only played 8 minutes. And since then, she's been on a tear. She's been able to add to this team. I think that could take them into the Final Four. And Gino Auriemma, as the legend he is, he knows how to coach his team to that point. UCLA, obviously, with Lauren Betts, I think people are going to have a mismatch problem with her. South Carolina, never betting against Dawn Staley ever. Like, I love what she's doing.
If you ever do that, you'll learn your lesson, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I've learned my lesson. I'm going with the Gamecocks every time because they know what it takes to get there. Like, they've done it. They're the defending national champions. They have depth. And I think earlier in the season, they were trying to figure out life, without a dominant big. You had Asia Wilson. You had Aaliyah Boston. You had Camila Cardoso. I think the emergence of Chloe Kitts and now Sanaya Fagan having a breakout year will be the difference maker. I think those losses that they took early on, that fueled their fire. And Dawn Staley has been very vocal about, receiving a lower 1 seed than usual, the second 1 seed. I think that's going to fuel them, and it's going to be scary. And then, as I mentioned, Notre Dame's run, I think they're going to figure out. I think they're going to use this rest to recharge and figure out what they need to do to move forward.
Well, you mentioned Paige Beckers and UConn, and obviously you picked South Carolina to win it all, right?
Yes, South Carolina Gamecocks for sure.
Does it surprise you, though, Autumn, because Staats, the nation is picking UConn as their favorite for the championship, right? Is that what the data is showing?
Yeah, so the numbers today, UConn on Tuesday, UConn is getting picked to win about 28.5%. South Carolina just under 21%. So I'm not saying UConn is getting 50%, but it's still surprising when like a team on the 2 line is getting picked more than everybody else. But again, UConn is UConn. They kind of are a league of their own, no matter what seed they're on. But yeah, that's cool. But again, South Carolina is still very popular. But here's kind of the fun twist about how numbers can be kind of cool and seen in different ways. Is even though UConn's the top pick to win the championship, South Carolina's picked the Final Four by far more than anybody else. They're in the Final Four, 71% of brackets. Well, UConn is only 57% of the time. So you can see that South Carolina is getting a lot of just people just like kind of marking them through the Final Four. But like you said, I wonder if it's people who are, with UConn with their potential regional final against USC, the people who do stick with UConn are then plowing through having them win the championship, but the ones who are more hesitant about the Elite Eight, are going a different direction with USC or whatever. But it's kind of a fun way how people can kind of see different things or come to different conclusions based off the brackets. Because I think South Carolina, all three of us and millions of people being like, I don't want to pick against Dawn Staley, especially when she's not happy. Again, they're the number 2 seed here. It's not like they're been, given a 4 seed or anything like that. But, it's kind of defending national champions that seem to be coming together at a strong time. I think a lot of people are picking them to win. Which I'm kind of curious. I wonder if they kind of creep up on UConn's percentage overall, but we'll see. But again, UConn has been looking great for a while. They're in a drought for them when it comes to winning a championship. So maybe people think it's their time.
It could be.
This is the time.
Autumn. That's maybe why. It's just because Paige last year, maybe they're just going with that.
Paige's last year, she knows what it takes. She has gotten her team to the Final Four stage or championship stage. The only year that UConn hasn't made it to the Final Four was when Paige sat out. So I think that overall, and they're not relying on Paige as much anymore. You have Sarah Strong, who isn't playing like a freshman at all. You got AZ Fudd back, and just Ashlyn Shade, KK Arnold. That group looks so balanced. They look poised. And you know what? If we have maybe UConn taking on South Carolina, UConn has done it this season by 29 points. South Carolina did not look like South Carolina at all. They looked dismantled. They looked unorganized. And UConn handled business. AZ Fudd, my X factor, showed out in that game beyond the arc. I think that's kind of what people are looking at. We've had that matchup, so that rematch gives us something to pick towards.
All right. Well, sounds like a lot of fun. Everybody needs to fill out their brackets, of course, before they lock on Friday. But super excited, Autumn. I know you got a busy week coming up, so we'll let you go. Thanks for breaking down your bracket with us.
Thank you for having me.